So now we start a discussion on externalities. This is the fourth part of the lecture on chapter 4, right? So this is a cost or benefit. What is an externality? This externality is a cost or benefit according to a third party external to the transaction, right? So there is a buyer and there is a seller. Those are the first two parties in a transaction. But suppose because of this transaction, a third party is also affected. This is like a spillover effect, right? So spillover effect on a third party, then we call that an externality. We can have positive externality or we can have negative externality. Like what? Inoculate against a disease, polio, right? So positive externality. So if I get a polio shot, then that is good for the society because that shot will reduce my chance of getting polio, and also it will reduce the chance that polio can spread through me to others, right? So that is the third party effect, the spillover effect, right? So, this is like another example of this is what? This another example is like a beekeeper. So suppose the beekeeper he keeps bees and he's producing honey, and then he's doing it for his personal benefit. But the bees that he's keeping will every morning those bees will get up and what? Get up and spread in the nearby garden and orchard, right? And what? Help pollinate the flower, and that will help increase the fruit, right? The output of the nearby communities, and that helps them. That is an example of positive externality. The action of the beekeeper is helping everybody in the community get better what? Flowers and get better fruit. That is positive externality. And we will show you that, and it happens that whenever there is positive externality, this will be ignored by the demand supply system, and then there will be too little of this will be produced. So this positive externality often results in the demand side market failure, and as a result we have what? We will have this under allocation problem. Too little of that item will be produced. On the other hand, this we have a negative externality. In case of negative externality, what do we have? Let me make some room here. Negative externality is like a air pollution, right? So in air pollution, negative externality, the steel mill owner, as we said, he's producing steel for his personal to maximize profit, but in the process he's also polluting the air, making other people sick. And then so like air pollution, like water pollution, all can have a similar problem. So that is an example of negative externality. when this third party when this third party is affected in a negative way, harmful way, by the action of the first two parties, the buyer and seller, we will have what? Negative externalities. So noise pollution close to an airport, right? Close to an airport, planes are coming, landing and taking off and making a lot of noise from jet engine, and that can create noise pollution to the community, to the people living nearby. This is why you will see that most of the time airports are located a little bit distant from the main cities, main population concentration. This is a way of what? Controlling noise pollution. Now, whenever there's no negative externalities, that will result in too much production, overproduced, over allocation, and then this will result in a supply side market failure. See, so the supply curve will show us the private cost, the but internal cost of the producer. But the producers, they will not be aware of the external cost of their action to the society. So that will be a supply side market failure. Externalities. So look at that. Demand is the green demand curve, the red supply curve, and then this in this case this is negative externality. So the supply curve for the society is st. If you include those external costs that is ignored by the private producer, the supply curve becomes st. So this economy should produce q0 amount of this commodity, but because the private producer does not know, will not count that st, he will count this as supply curve. So then what? Then this will be the amount he produce. So he will produce. So this is what negative externality, and we have a problem of over allocation. They should produce based on st. They should produce q0, but they are producing qe. That will be the problem. So too much air pollution, too much noise pollution is going on, right? Now in panel B to the right hand side, we show you positive externality. Look at that demand side failure. See, the actual demand curve for a person is D, but then demand to the society, so benefit to the society is DT. So this DT is the demand curve for the entire community. Remember the beekeeper. The beekeeper, he will only consider the profit that he makes from making honey, but the benefit to the society for those bees is what? The pollination, that the bees will help, and more fruit, more production of more flowers, more food, that is benefit to the society. So we can add, we need to add that also to the existing demand curve D, and then what happen, and then the true demand for the commodity is what? DT. So now the equilibrium supply curve is ST, the demand curve is DT. So equilibrium, it should be Q0, but the private producers will produce only QE, because we know that the beekeeper, the private producer, will only count his benefit. He will ignore the spillover effect, the positive externality effect on the production of flower and fruit. Now, government intervention. What can the government can do to solve this over allocation in negative externalities and under allocation in positive externalities? One example is this one. Correct negative externalities. To correct negative externalities, government can make several things. One, they can do this direct control, directly make law through Congress and Senate, like this Clean Air Act of 1990s, and then limit production of harmful chemicals. So like this Clean Air Act of 1990, it limited what? Maximum available control technology for 189 toxic chemicals by 90% between 1990 and 2000. Then number two is what? Number two is what? Required a 30 to 60% reduction in tailpipe emissions from automobiles by 2000. Then what? The three is what? Mandated a 50% reduction in CFC, like CFC, chlorofluorocarbon. This is one of the main chemical pollutants responsible for depletion of ozone layer in the Earth's atmosphere, and that depletion of ozone layer is what is causing that greenhouse effect, right? And then forced coal burning utilities to reduce the sulfur dioxide by about 50%, to reduce the acid rain destruction of lakes and forests. So see, so sulfur dioxide is responsible, this is harmful chemical responsible for the acid rain destruction of lakes and forests. And all of these harmful chemical, there's this direct control. The country, the producers that cannot exceed those controls. They cannot produce too much. This is one way to deal with negative externalities. Or there is what? The specific taxes. In here, manufacturing excise tax on CFC. So chlorofluorocarbon, there is a tax on this, So if the producer is producing something and as a byproduct he is also producing chlorofluorocarbon, then the producer has to pay tax for that. This is shown in the next, in panel B, next graph. Look at that. Here in panel A we have what? A negative externality situation. The producer, private producer is will follow this S supply curve, but we know that if you take account of the negative externality is what ST, cost to the society is actually much higher, so that cost adds up, so the supply curve will jump from S to ST if you include the negative externality and cost to society. So optimum allocation is at point A. That is the best for the society Q0, and there is over allocation problem here because the private producer, as we have said, he will ignore ST, he will follow S, and he will produce at QE, not Q0. So he's producing too much, polluting too much. So what can the government do? The government can do a what? Collect externality tax. So government can now ask the producer to pay tax on production of what? Harmful items like what? Harmful chemicals like CFC, as we said, right? Here in the previous slide here, tax for CFC. So the government put the tax with the amount, this vertical distance, this tax, the amount of this one, right? So this will shift the S supply curve to ST, and in that case the producer then will what? Because the tax will be added like a one component of the cost. So we know that when cost of production goes up, the supply curve also goes up, right? As a result, when tax is imposed, the supply curve will go up. It will shift from S to ST, reflecting higher cost. And as a result, output will decrease from QE to Q0. See, this was the problem, over allocation. Now that problem of over allocation is solved because we are producing Q0 here. Then the next example is what? Example of how can the government can deal with positive externalities is correct positive externalities. We know that here there will be, the problem is under allocation, and then the government need to produce more, take steps to produce more. What can the government do? Well, here in this slide we propose several things. Two ways to deal with externalities are, one is subsidy, right? Subsidy, and the other is what? Other is government provision. So subsidies to producers will shift the supply curve to the right and increase equilibrium quantity. This is one thing. See, subsidy is the fact that when producers produce, the government will pay the producers. So that is subsidy. And then this is the opposite of the tax. And when the government gives subsidy to the producers, it will encourage the producers to supply more, and they will supply more. Then the supply curve will shift to the right. Supply curve will shift to the right, and this will increase equilibrium quantity. This will solve the problem of under allocation in case of positive externalities. Or the government can give subsidies to the consumers, right? And which will shift the demand curve to the right and increase the equilibrium quantity. So when consumers get subsidy, they will consume more. So here government paying money to the consumers to encourage them to consume more. This will shift the demand curve out, and this also will result in higher equilibrium quantity. Solve the problem of under allocation. Then government provision. Government can itself come and produce and sell the product for cheap so that people demand more. So solving the problem of under allocation. Like polio eradicated in USA, smallpox eradicated in India, pay villagers to bring their children to get vaccinated. Government not only produced the vaccine, they paid children, they paid families to get their children vaccinated to encourage a spread of this vaccine, because they said that the vaccine has a positive externality.